It's so funny. Sometimes, I don't know if I told Mike that, or I didn't have a chance to tell Mike this, but sometimes I sit down and I write, because we write a lot, but sometimes I put a lot of thought into something and then no one reads it. And then other times I put things together, but it has fun buzzwords like API and marketplace. And then suddenly it just like kind of blows up. So this is one of those things, but let me try to best explain this because it's a little bit abstract, right? And it comes back to what we were talking about before, which is sometimes we, like for me, I just create frameworks on how to kind of like, I don't want to use the word pattern match, but just kind of evaluate opportunities in terms of their business model and defensibility. And so when I think about API as a marketplace is a great example. So I think an API as a marketplace is very similar to, has the best of both components, right? It's similar to a traditional marketplace in that you're connecting suppliers and buyers, right? The major difference is that unlike a traditional marketplace, the transaction is on the application layer, right? So in a marketplace, the buyers and the suppliers recognize and put a lot of faith in the brand and the platform, like the identity, right, of that marketplace. But I think with the API as a marketplace, it sits on the infrastructure layer and is abstracted away from the end users themselves. So as an example of Shippo, right, or kind of Stripe as a marketplace, the product itself is an API, right? So a developer of an e-commerce business would integrate this into their checkout flow. And if the developer wants to give the buyer, rather the customer, the option of who to choose for their carriers to ship their products, they can. But for the most part, people are like kind of default, I'll just trust Shippo's choice. But I think over time, or not even over time, some merchants want to give their customers the choice, right? So the cool thing with Shippo is that Shippo just doesn't say like, here's the end all fit all and you have to just use whatever shipping provider we have, you can choose, right? But for the most part, it's kind of like that decision and that routing is abstracted from the end user. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then so and I use I also use examples of what aren't, right? So in the example of so Postmates has an API, and like Apple or, because I know Apple has like a sweet deal with Postmates right now. So every time we order something from the Apple store, you have a Postmates person probably deliver it and you don't even know that it was someone from Postmates, right? Because Apple just calls that API, right? And the reason why it's not a marketplace, even though you have all these different Postmates, like people picking up the stuff and delivering, like you don't care that it was Angela that delivered or Mike versus Dan, right? So the supply the differentiated supply doesn't matter as much as it does with Shippo. That's my long-winded answer for you.
The Shippo example put it together for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wait, Angela, Levi here.
Hi, Levi.
How's it going? So quick question though, because I think if I'm receiving a product or if as I'm buying a product, I don't necessarily care who the person that is, whether it's, UPS or USPS or FedEx, like whoever's delivering the product. And so I'd love to kind of dig in a little further on the weeds on that example.
100%. So you as a customer might not care that it's UPS or USPS or DHL, but you might care about time, right? So USPS might be faster in this particular region than FedEx would be, right? Because you're closer to like a hub or something. So it's rarely about a specific carrier. In Shippo's case, it's more about time and price, and they're related, right? And so that's the difference. It's not that I'm not, and of course that's linked to a specific carrier, but less about like, hey, I want USPS or UPS.